Old soul, young world.
Old souls, young souls, and all my damn souls in between. Welcome back to another week of Old Soul in the Young World with your host, Jesse Ellie. Hey! Guys, it is a very special episode today. We have a female entrepreneur, author, poet, and somebody who has taken her life and her obstacles and turned them into a purpose. Thank you for being here and welcome to the show, Reesa Write. What's going on, girl?
Hello.
Hello. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Yes. Ever since we met, I feel like this has been kind of a conversation in the works. So,
Yes.
I'm glad that we made this happen. And, Reesa, I will give you the reins to just let people know where you're from and kind of what you do right now.
Hello, everyone. I am Reesa Write. I am an author and poet of 3 self-published books.
Hey.
That's fire.
I'm the CEO of Reesa Writes Ink, which is in the works a publishing services company to help other people get their stories out. And I'm from Boston, Mass. And I'm also an educator and a mom of 2.
Yes.
That's fire.
She wears many hats. She does many things, as many women in the world do, because, I feel like it is kind of an expectation of us to be able to do and be everything in a way, like superhero, And I think a huge, huge thing is that your passion and your purpose in your writing is now leading you into starting your own business, which is super cool. But before we get into the entrepreneurship side of it, kind of wondering if we can go back to like your basis, your beginning, where you started off. Like, where did writing, the form of communication of writing or poetry, even start out for you? I know, and it's hard because if you read Reesa Write's books, there's a whole story that goes behind everything, and it's very in-depth. But when did you actually start enjoying books or writing?
As far back as I can remember is around, that my memory entails, is about like 10, 11, 12, I would say I got into journaling. Mm-hmm. Journaling was huge. Like within a few years, I can think back that I had at least like a whole stack, maybe 10, 12 journals. And I just would like talk to my journal. Like that was my way of like communicating. I don't have any siblings. Mm-hmm. So I grew up an only child. So I was the kid, big imagination, very creative. I was drawing. I mean, I had the little boom box. I would sit there for hours writing songs so I could learn the lyrics to sing with the song.
Yes, facts.
So yeah, it was like a lot of poems, little short stories. I even remember I had a typewriter.
Really?
Yeah. So maybe when I was about like 6, 7 years old, I had a little typewriter, and I still to this day have a little story that I sat there and typed up.
No way. What's funny? It's like, there's probably people listening in who are like, what's a typewriter? Like, what, and it's funny because my great aunt, who I'm named after, who had passed away, growing up, I would go to her house, and in this upstairs room in the corner, there was this old brown desk with this beautiful typewriter on it. And I, at the time, this was in the 90s, and I was like, I knew what it was, but once I started typing on it and seeing like, oh my gosh, like almost like how permanent the words were, it was so beautiful to me. It was such a different form of like communication. It's cool. I never met anybody else who like had mentioned having a typewriter, so that's pretty fire. Do you still write your books on a typewriter?
No. I've thought about getting one though, just for the fun of it.
Yeah. It's like therapeutic, I feel like, Yeah.
Back then it was more like writing, no computers, no laptops, no phones.
Yeah.
So you actually sat down, focused, and did what you had to do. But even like I can remember being in school, I was always like doodling or write. I was the letter writer. And back then we used to write letters to each other, fold them up, and so I definitely come from a writing era. So I didn't know that it was a gift then. Like I didn't know. It was just something I liked to do. It was just how I passed the time.
Right.
And just to piggyback off that, I'll say like for anyone who has children, like I wasn't as encouraged to like do those things that it could be something.
Right.
And that's something that now I like to, put that message out there. Like, my daughter is literally mini me, and she does all the same things, if not more, than I did at that age. So now I'm like pouring into her. I mean, I bring her to art places and I show her like, you can grow up and get paid for these things. Like, it's not just a hobby. It's something that you're really good at. Because I think sometimes when you're good at something, you kind of naive and you think, man, oh, everyone's good at it. You don't really know, like, no, like, this person might be good at math, but I'm good at, like, I'm horrible at math.
Girl, me
but then
too.
I meet people
Literally
that
the worst.
they're so good at math and they're like, oh, but I can't write an essay to save my life.
Exactly.
So
it's that left side brain type thing too. It's like, are you more on the logical or more on the creative?
Right.
But something that I really want to highlight that you said is like that support given to youth when they have a gift. You know what I mean? Because like Old Soul Young World, like I grew up always being like in 5th grade at story time, I shared this poem, and I've talked about it on the show before, but like I will never forget that day. It was literally the start to my writing career, and I will remember my teacher saying, one day, Jessie, I'm gonna see your book in stores and I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna buy it. And like that stuck with me. You know what I mean? Like that encouragement of an older woman in my life being like, I see your gift, I appreciate your gift, I recognize your gift, and this is what we can do to like bring it forward. Mind you, it's one teacher in 5th grade, so obviously you have to move on, you know, you get new teachers, et cetera, et cetera. But when that support and that love is nurtured by a mother, by somebody you came from who gives you that option, it's like the growth opportunities are so vast, you know, and it's like you're giving that to a new generation now off of your own experience, which is beautiful because like it looks like a lot of the things that you've worked on creating come from past experience. Do you find that?
Now, yeah. In the midst of it, when I wasn't creating and wasn't even thinking about it, and that's another thing I put out there is that this was never like a dream. And that's the difference is like I never was like, oh, I'm going to write a book one day. These really were just hobbies that I just passed the time. So then to think like 20 years later, and also, like I said, I am from Boston. So, you know, I'm from an environment where a lot of us wasn't poured into because a lot of us were coming from homes that had so much going on, whether it be trauma or neglect or, you know, my home was safe and but there was a lot of things missing, like emotionally and mentally. Yeah. So those things weren't being poured into me. So if that's not being poured into you, then you kind of like are in these spaces. So when I grew up, then I realized that was how I like maybe was like trying to heal myself or trying to get things out that I didn't feel like comfortable talking to anybody about. So that's another thing. So then when it came time to write my book, it was therapeutic for me. And then the connection was made. Like when I was younger, that was my therapy.
Right. And now
then it led me to writing a book to try to heal myself, which then, and also help other people heal and embrace their stories. So it's literally like came full circle.
That's beautiful. And I do actually just want to show your books on camera real quick right now, just so the audience knows what we're talking about. These are 2 of Reesa's books. This is Twisted Fate Uncut. There's also the Twisted Fate version, not uncut. Right. And then we have her poetry book, Still I Rose. You can get either of these online through Reesa, or you can hit her up directly. But a big, topic we're going to be talking about today is her book, Twisted Fate Uncut, because it is a memoir. And a lot of the things that you've gone through that have led to this are actually explained through your memoir. Yes. And it's funny, like, I would just love to start off with the name of it, Twisted Fate. Why did you choose to name the book Twisted Fate?
Okay, so there's actually an actual story to this.
Oh, there's an actual... Let's go! Let's hear it.
So when I decided, when the day that it came to my brain, the vision, and I said, and God literally spoke to me and said, and I'm like going through my trials and I'm like in this painful like place. I'm trying to figure out why. Like that's what like every day I'm like, why have I gone through so much? Why am I going through this now? Why? Like I'm in this like state of like understanding. Like I want to understand what I don't understand. Yeah. And that's when he told me, because you're going to help people. You're going to write your story and you're going to help people with your story. And that's like, okay, so this was the only way.
Yeah. So your book came from like a spiritual self-realization?
Yes. Like, absolutely. And that's like, when I say this is 100%, this was God. Even for me to even put that together on my own from beginning to end, I cried through it. When I say blood, sweat, tears, like, I cried through it. Like, I didn't want to do it. Like, I went through that. It was like a birth of something. And I was in such like a painful place. Like, it would hurt to write. It would hurt. Like, I'm crying on the pages in the chapter 7 that I was like going through.
Yes.
Yeah. And he told me, like, you're going to write your book. And I literally sat down, and I am very spiritual. And during this time, I was back into my walk with God. Because I was raised in church. I was raised with God. But then, you know, life happens. And like, I always believed. But there's a whole difference between believing in God and then actual walking with God and taking that journey and doing this with him every single day. So I was in that place. So like, I could hear when he speaks to me. I knew what he was telling me to do. I could feel the growing pains. And I forgot the question because I'm
honestly, that's the beautiful part about podcasting. There's such an open conversation because it brought something up in my mind. Like when you were talking about when you're writing the book and you were struggling and, you know, you're kind of like battling the birth of what you're creating, this purpose that you were given from a higher entity, a power that is not physical, it's esoteric, and you're just having to have that full faith, that full belief. Oh, and we'll get back to it because it was about the name of the story. So I'll let you go.
The name.
We'll go back. But was there any point during that time when you were writing it that you were fighting against it, like, maybe I'm not supposed to do this? Maybe it feels so hard, it feels so difficult that, like, you want to give up? Or did you just know, like, I have to fight through this and finish this book?
Yeah. I knew, I mean, in my life overall, I've always been someone who, when I start something, I have to finish it.
Oof.
So no matter what it is.
We love that motivated mindset.
So anything in my life, I mean, like, I dropped out of high school twice. I was a high school dropout twice. Not once, but twice. Went to night school, left, and then got my GED. But either, you know, it's like, whatever the finish line is, I have to get there no matter, you know, I don't know how I'm going to get there. I can fail a billion times, but it's like, okay, now what? Like, I have to get, you know, college, I went to hair school, graduated. You know, like, if I start something, I'm really adamant on finishing it. Even if I'm never going to do it again, or, you know, who knows what's going to happen. But I always had that mindset. So it was like, it took me about, I published it 2018. I had the vision about 2016.
Okay, so it took a couple of years. It wasn't an overnight
so it would
process.
be like months. I wouldn't write. It could be 6 months go by, and I started on, you know, put a paragraph here, and then a lot of writer's block, a lot of anxiety around it. I'm going in that moment, in that time, I'm going through depression. I'm going through anxiety because of what I was going through. So I'm battling that, then life, then anything else that's going on in my life. But then I have this vision in the back of my head that I have to get this book done.
And then inside of the book is another expression of emotion and pulling you back to, like, past experiences and making you vulnerable again. It's like, so while you're going through the process of writing and feeling those things, you have to, like, put those things into words at the same time, which is, it's crazy and it's admirable. Yeah. But I do want to go back to the title. So what was that?
So I came home from church one night, and it was New Year's Eve, and I spent New Year's Eve, I think it was 2016, I want to say.
Okay.
Or maybe might have been the beginning of 2017. And I made a post, and I put my birthday, and I just wrote, I'm going to write a book. And I was like, I came to this decision, I'm going to write a book. And then I put, like, hashtag, this is my story. Because I didn't have a title. I didn't even have, like, I had no idea what I was going to do.
You just felt it.
So it was just like, this is my story. It's like, that's the best way I could tell people, like, oh, I'm going to write a book about myself. So the duration of time as I'm writing it, you know, I would talk about it here and there. I'd promote it. You know, I was consistent on that. Like, every once in a while, I'd bring it up. I'd post something. Yeah. And because this is back when, like, I didn't really care about social media. I wasn't, you know, I was on there for fun, posting memes and my kids. I didn't have any, like, big thing to post about. Like, oh, I go to work, you know, and then I'm with my kids. Like, my life is not like...
Yeah, I feel it.
So I always put hashtag, this is my story with the rose. And I stay consistent with that, and people know me by that. Even still now, 4 years later, they know the roses. They know when they see certain things that's Reesa Write.
Yeah.
So then I had a vision to do promo videos a few months before I was going to put the book out.
Okay.
So my videographer, when he sent me back the videos, at the end of each video, he put "Coming soon, Twisted Fate." But that was not supposed. That was just chapter 7. So up until that point, when I was doing the videos, I was still promoting as this is my story, because I'm like, unless something else comes to me that makes sense, I honestly was just going to keep it simple and just say this is my story with me on the cover. And he put it on all of them, and then I said, "Whoa, it sounds good. Like it sounds like mysterious. It sounds like, ooh, what's that about?"
Yeah.
So I kept it. So technically, he named my book.
Okay.
In a way. I mean, it was the chapter name.
Yeah.
But it made sense because,
I was about to say that made complete sense. Like if you read fully through the book from start to finish, it is a twisted fate. Like you don't expect how it's going to go and where it leads you to. And at the end, you're like, oh, wow, okay.
Right. Because the whole message behind Twisted Fate. So when I decided to try to get into writing, it was prior to writing this book, but I was going to write a book about a love story. So it was when my church, it was my church that started encouraging me when they found out, oh, she can write, she can do art and stuff. So they was encouraging me, and then that's when I told someone like, oh, I think I'm going to write a book, and it's going to be Memoirs of a True Love Story.
I remember you telling me about this when we first met. No, but I love it. I want to hear about it. Yeah.
Because that's where I was at.
Yeah.
And I was in this love story that, and I had this whole life planned out, and then things took a left turn, which to me, that's a twist.
Yeah.
So that's where twist. So I can't tell you, because I named chapter 7 Twisted Fate, and I don't know where, it's just, this was all the vision along the way.
Yeah. 100%.
And I will say that to encourage anybody who wants to start a project or start anything, like, when they say just start, that's a real thing.
Yo.
Like, just start. Because when I tell you, like,
100%.
there's no way from when I sat down and just jotted a few things on a piece of paper and now I have the finished product. There's a lot along the way. And I'm very big on stillness. I'm very big on, like, quiet time and waiting until something feels right. I'm big on that, like, not getting ahead of yourself or doing things just to do it. Like, if you wait and be patient, you things will come to you and it will work the way it's supposed to work.
Facts.
So I really, even to the end of the book, I wrote the whole book. I had the chapters, had the content, everything. Then I went in the Bible and said, into Google.
You know.
And I Googled scriptures about to put each scripture in each chapter.
Right.
In each chapter, there's a scripture in the Bible that has something that
relatable to the chapter
I went through.
Right.
And I was like, wow, this is like...
Yeah. No, I feel you 100%. And the thing that's most beautiful about it, and while you were talking, like I was trying to listen to you and it kept coming in my head, and it's like, I believe in a divine power. Like I believe that there is like a spiritual entity that guides us and pushes us forward to do these things that are not physical yet, but they're an idea. You know what I mean? And when I say that, the words that kept coming in my head when you were speaking was blind faith. I feel like you have walked your life with blind faith in knowing that something would come in the future, even in the moment if you couldn't recognize it. Like when you started that book, you're manifesting those posts on Instagram or on Facebook. You're manifesting this book is coming, even if it wasn't finished, even if you didn't have an editor, even if you didn't know what the title was going to be. You knew this final product would come to fruition one day, using your blind faith. Do you feel like faith or belief in something other than this physical world has played a part in you being able to overcome your obstacles to be where you're at now?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'd say faith my whole life. I mean, I was a mom. I became a mom at 16. a lot of people was against it. I'm 16, so it's like, oh, you probably shouldn't do that, this and that. I was the doctor was the only one that spoke to me privately and said, this is your body, this is your decision, you're gonna have to live with it, you choose what to do. Now imagine if I didn't have somebody tell me that. Who knows? You know what I mean? These are all the things in life, like every single moment matters, because if it wasn't for that moment, it would have been something else.
Yes.
Everything.
Right.
So even as far back as, coming up in childhood, I can go back and even if at that time I didn't know I was having a spiritual encounter, now I can look back and be like, that was a spiritual encounter. That saved me. That saved my life. That person saying that to me changed everything, or this happened. You know what I mean? Like you can go back and like piece together things.
Yes.
And then it makes sense.
Yes.
So faith was always, my parents separated and I was 18 with a 6-month-old.
Wow.
No siblings, never held a baby. No one taught me how to take care of this baby, but I had love. I wasn't raised on money. I was, my parents worked hard and we never went without, but I definitely was like, the hand-me-downs and, the cheap meals, and we wasn't going out to eat. We wasn't going out places. I didn't get none of that. It was just like, go to school, go home, hang out with your cousins, like regular stuff, like nothing like.
And then you go straight from being a kid to being a mother and being responsible and having to work and having to worry about all these other things. And you kind of just said it within what you were just saying, but it was also brought up in your book, and I want to reiterate. You said, we didn't go out to eat, we didn't have, we weren't super wealthy, we weren't this or that, but you had love. And you bring up this point in the book about finances aren't everything. Having the physical, the aspects of all these things aren't everything. What really matters is internally what you produce inside and what you can do with that, or if a situation happens, how you respond to that situation. Do you still feel that way today? That like love and internal stuff is more than wealth?
Yeah. Well, I believe I'm imbalanced now. So like, how do I say it? I thank God every day that I was raised the way I was raised, and I was not raised to care about things, because that's what helped me survive. So that's what, being that young with a child, it was only up until about 2 years ago, when I got upgraded to my teaching position, that I was able to do things that I was never able to do.
Wow.
So only 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So when you start with nothing, like I started with nothing, and it never mattered how much I hustled. It never mattered. I was 18. From then on, I was paying rent. I was paying bills. I was paying, getting on the bus. I was on welfare.
I think I have down here you moved 7 times before you were 20, or by you
10.
were 20.
Yeah.
10. Like,
close to it. But so from 18 was when I went into the first shelter, and from 18 to 21 we moved close to 3 times. No, it's close to 10 times.
Wow.
My son was 3 years old. Yeah.
That's amazing. And throughout these trials and tribulations, like did you ever see yourself in the future? Like if I had told you, when you had your first or second child and you're in your 20s and you're going through all this stuff on your own and all of this, like, oh, Reesa, you're going to be a teacher in the future. Oh, Reesa, you're going to be a book publisher and write your own book. Like, what would you say if I told you that 10 years ago?
It was nowhere near in my mind. In the future, nothing, like, at all. It literally, like I said, it's just the steps. It's like you keep going, you keep everything. Eventually, you get to where, you're meant to be.
Yeah. And I'm gonna mess up this quote, but there was somewhere in the book that you wrote, I think it was towards the end, all the bricks that are thrown at you use those bricks to like build your building. You use those as your steps. All the negatives, like all the obstacles, you create your empire from that. And that's physically and literally what you have done with yourself. But like emotionally and mentally, like I'm just wondering, because people are listening and they're like, okay, you had a kid at 16, you did all these jobs, you moved all these times, you didn't have a quite stable family life, you had stuff, your dad had passed away, you had been in abusive relationships. what kept you motivated to just keep going? Because like, honestly, Reesa, like we met very divinely. I don't even know what the word is to use, but like I had an event in Boston. Reesa showed up because she had seen my work and like came just to meet me. And I am so blessed that you did that because this was like meant to be. But like throughout, you know, all of that, I would have never known when I looked at you, when I met you that day, what you had gone through, the battles you had gone through, the scars that you have, just because you present yourself so calm, so confident, so balanced. Do you know what I mean? Where did that motivation to be who you are today like come from for you? I know that's really deep. Sorry. I'm curious for myself because like you honestly amaze me as a woman.
It's been a long journey.
I'm like, damn, like, yo, like how did you go throughout all that and you're like having 2 children and you're trying to get your GED and you're trying to like be a good person because you're a good person. Not to say you don't have imperfections and you didn't go through things, but you did come out on the other end on the right side.
I know, because I'm going back memory lane. I mean, it sounds cliche, but like it obviously was in me. I mean, I look at my dad, and my dad was a fighter. He definitely, absolutely was a fighter. Unfortunately, when he passed, and he lost to addiction, but he always worked. He always worked multiple jobs. He always was in counseling. Till he passed, he was still going to church. He was still going to AA meetings. He was still trying. I mean, like when I went, the only thing that they had when he passed that I got was 2 Bibles, a rosary bead, and there was a folder, and he had just paid all his bills on the weekend. And he had nothing in his bank account. And that's all I had. Like they gave me like a couple paper, paperwork and stuff, and I looked through it. And even that's not an accident. Like, and when my dad passed, he didn't have much and he didn't believe in like living off much and stuff like that. Still like basic needs and stuff. And I'm just gonna go back real quickly to your question before, because I go everywhere about the wealth thing and all that. So I thank God every day for all my struggles, but now, and I know a lot of people can relate, it's like now I'm trying to like build that new relationship with money. Because when you come from a poverty mindset, it's very hard to like change your mind on certain things. And even like say like the first time I could take my kids out to like what I consider a nice restaurant, you feel like out of place. You feel, a lot of confidence things, and maybe not that you don't deserve it, but you have this relationship with money that a lot of people my age, a lot of other entrepreneurs and all these people that we're doing this work because we want better. So I will say, no, it's not the most important thing, but I am happy that we're in this generation of knowledge, and we're able to teach our kids. Like I'm teaching my son about credit,
right?
And and I'm learning about credit now.
Right. Right.
So it's like, there was no like
financial literacy that you got as a child. And like, I do remember in the start of your book, like you talk about humble beginnings, coming from humble beginnings. And when you're raised from humble beginnings, it teaches you how much more to appreciate things. And when you get, like you're saying, going to a fancy dinner, when other families, they don't even have a second thought about it. But to you, it's like a goal, it's an accomplishment, something that you've done yourself. And there was, times in there when you said like, you didn't have water, you didn't have heat, you didn't have, certain basic survival needs that people would think about. And then when you got a better job, like I think you said you were making $500 a month. Then you got a promotion to a job where you're making $500 a week. Right?
And I was like not cashing the checks.
You were saving them.
I was putting my checks in the closet. I would cash like one check, and I was living up because I was living the same way as if I was only getting that still $500. So like I was paying to rent my room, for whatever clothes we needed, our necessities, and that's it. But it was like, I don't need that money. Like, what am I going to do with that?
Right.
Because my mind was already, it's not a bad thing.
No.
But
I almost think it's a good thing. Like, not a good thing, but like, it did teach you to be, you kind of almost from your humble beginnings taught yourself how to be financially responsible, because you're like, if I don't have it, I'm not going to go spend it. And if I get more, I'm going to save it. I'm not going to go spend it. You already knew like this needs to be held for something else. You know what I mean? Yeah. But also you wrote like shit would happen. You didn't have emergency funds. You didn't have stuff to fix your car.
No. Like if something happened to my car, then my car was gone.
Exactly.
Like there was no room for error. There was no room for mistakes. There was no room for anything. Like when you're in that, it's like when I did the GED, you know, I had to make a decision. Like, do I want to get my GED or do I want to work? Some people would say, oh, I need money now and this and that. I chose to struggle because I'm like always like thinking future. So maybe that's what motivate me. Maybe that's like one answer to your question is like, I definitely always thought ahead. So it's like, I always understood what I do now, or I was learning to understand that is, you know, what's going to benefit me later.
Ooh.
So yeah, I can go.
I'm sorry. Can I go on a quick rant? Like, guys, anybody listening in, what Reesa just said, what you are doing right now, what you are currently doing right now, today, when you're listening to this, decisions that you are making this week are playing into your purpose in the future, things that are going to happen in the future. And just to go back to something that you had said before in our conversation, you didn't realize at the time the obstacles and the struggles that you were going through we're leading to something higher. And in the future, now you can look back and be like, that's why that happened. I've gone through the same experiences. Anybody listening in, if you've gone through a struggle, an obstacle, something that has brought you down to your lowest point, and you're like, I can't come back from this, you're only at that low point. So in the future, when you're at your high, you can recognize why you went through that. You can see the growth and the changes that were made. And to speak of growth and changes, like, what do you feel like, Reesa, what has been the difference or like the impact like between, you know, Reesa Write, like now when you're an entrepreneur, when you have your books now published, compared to before, compared to, you know, prior Reesa, when you were going through the struggle, like what do you feel like that difference is or that impact has made on you?
So my first introduction to just like entrepreneurship was I always was like trying to make more money.
It's the goal to survive, you know?
Yeah, so when I was younger during that duration, I'll share this. I don't think I've ever shared this, but when my daughter was born, that's when I put away. So I have a saying, I actually wrote a paper on this before, but that my son made me a mother, but my daughter made me a woman. So I had
that just touched my heart. I think I'm gonna cry.
No, you know what? I had my son at 17, and I had her, he was 5, like pushing 5. So it's 5 years. In those 5 years, I kept me and him above water, but everything wasn't always legit. And, you know, I don't talk about that in the book, but, you know, I hustled. Whether it was doing hair, selling clothes, like helping people.
I mean, there was one chapter where you talked about being a dancer, or trying to be a dancer for like one night, maybe. Sorry, but
yeah, I tried for like a little bit, but that was a spiritual experience.
Facts.
And at that time, I understood that, and I was 20. That was right before I had her. So I was like 20 years old, and that experience, like, it was evident.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, I don't know if it's because I was raised up in the church. I was raised up, you know, around prayer and this and that. And my father was a praying man. And I believe until he passed, and I still believe he's with me, that a lot of his prayers, I do believe that your prayers, you know, help your kids and protect them. And you get into these situations, and it's like, how did that happen? You know what I mean? Like, like, how did that situation just happen? But that just could have possibly saved my life. Right.
It did save your life, I feel like, you know, like your mindset.
I was like, what the heck am I doing?
Right.
But to go back, remind me of the...
Oh, sorry. It's just like, what has been the change in your life or the impact in your life from prior to being an author, entrepreneur to now?
Yeah, so I was always like, so after I had my daughter, you know, I felt like she made me a woman because she used to like stand up in the crib and like, you know, your son loves you in a son way, but you're a girl, he's a boy. So he's not looking at you the same way. He's looking at you like, I love you, but he's not like, want to be you. My daughter was like, she would stand up. I remember she'd stand up in the crib. She was little, like 1 year old, and she'd hold on to the little rails, and I'd be like doing my makeup or doing my hair, getting ready, and she would just watch me and look at me. And it was like, she want to be me. You know, like that's the feeling I got. I'm like, she's like watching me.
Right.
And she's 15 now, and she still watches me. And
wow.
I felt it, and I was like, there's nothing, like, I'm not going to ever put my life at risk. I'm not going to do anything, you know, that can harm me or them, or that something could take me away from them. You know, I'm not going to do that. I was always a risk taker. I was bad. I was running the streets. You know, I did all that as
I
teenager.
I didn't know you fought as much as you did. I was like, damn, is she going to throw up the hands today when she comes? I mean, I got the hands, but like, you fought. No, but it plays into what you know how to teach your daughter in the future too. Like, I don't want you to have to go through these experiences, so let me show you how not to.
And setting an example, 100%. And being like, you know, I was who I was, but it's like that growth of like, okay, but now I need to be more careful. I need to be, you know, like not making decisions so carelessly or recklessly.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I still went through a lot after that, but I wasn't willing to put my life at risk or do something, you know, like hustle to get money, and then what if something bad happens? So, but I always was like still trying to, you know, find other ways to get money. So I was introduced to this health company and to like sell health products.
Okay.
So I did that for a while, wasn't really like into it. And I think this is when I was starting to realize like who I am as a person. And I said this to someone, like how much entrepreneurship like breaks you down. And then I think, was it you when we were talking the other day?
I think we did talk about it the other
like,
day.
how it like changes you. You know, like entrepreneurship is so much bigger.
For sure.
You know, the inside work that gets done as you're on this journey.
Yeah.
So I did that. It was like, you know, made some money, wasn't really feeling it. And this is when I started realizing like I want to be somebody who's really passionate about what I do. That's, you know, some people can do stuff and they maybe not great, but they can go for the money.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's hard for me. So it has to be something that really moves me for me to even be able to do it.
Right.
So then I started learning about like trading and stuff like that. And I did that for a little bit, but it still wasn't like there. And then like, so this was like my introduction. So, you know, to answer your question, so before I was an author, I was kind of started to put myself in those scenes just by being curious about like entrepreneurship and making money, you know, for yourself and starting a business maybe and doing something for yourself. Because I always had that mindset, but because of my home life and because of trying to survive, like I wasn't necessarily, my home always came first in my foundation. Like, so it was like, I was never willing to like, you know, make us struggle even more for me to chase the dream. Right. You know what I mean? Like some people do, but I couldn't do that because I knew what I came from. It was like, state. I'm already barely putting food, you know, we have our needs. I'm not going to make us go under that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's like for me to do that, now I'd be like taken away from our basic needs. Yeah. So like, I'm not doing that.
Right. And like, also when you talk about that too, because like in the beginning of the book, like you talked about like a lot of the kind of responsibility that you held in the household, like, you know, one, being an only child, two, the struggles between your parents with some physical abuse and just a little bit of a disconnect, you know what I mean? And learning how to like cope with that and even like past coping, accepting and I'm just wondering, like, throughout your experience, have you had to work through these things? Because like you speak now and you sound so great and you sound so at peace with everything, but like, was there time periods where you had to go through forgiveness, where you had to, you know, let go of certain things so that you could continue to be on your purpose, or let go of people to continue on your purpose?
I'm still doing that.
Hey,
to be honest.
Can you say that again?
I am still doing that. Yeah, and that's a good one. That's a continuous thing. I've let go of long time friendships. Not because of what I'm doing, but when mindsets change and you are so removed from certain things, and then someone is still there. So you guys were both here at one point, but now you're here and they're still here. It's very, very, very hard to maintain.
For sure.
Not with everyone. But if God, and again, if when you pray that prayer that if anyone is not for, when you start praying for God's will, that's a very scary prayer to do. Yeah. I'm sure, it can take a long time. I remember the first time I did it was only maybe like a couple of years ago. Wow. It wasn't, you know what I mean? Like when you pray, your will be done. And if this person means me no harm, and if he's not the one, and you don't want them answers. Yeah,
right. Yeah, because they're not always the answers you want to hear. But that's the most beautiful thing, because healing and healing from trauma, when you come from trauma, it's a process, a long process. And in that forgiveness and that genuine understanding of being like, even though I don't want to hear these answers right now, I need to be vulnerable. I need to open up. I need to speak those words out loud and say that, even if I don't want to hear the response. Sometimes I need it. You know what I mean? To keep me in line or in check. I have so many freaking notes, yo. I can't, like, your book, like, I just genuinely need to speak to the people right now. Reesa's book, I'm a reader. I've always been a reader, a writer. I've taken a little bit of a hiatus from reading books because I've been so busy. This is one of the first books I've read in a very long time, start to finish, and I cried like 7 times. And it wasn't always out of sadness. It was actually out of relatability. It was actually because the words that you that you wrote that I was reading, I've spoken to myself in my mind before. Like, you say shit so honest and so clearly, and you're so vulnerable when you write this memoir, that it is so healing for somebody else who has been through trauma. It's almost like a self-reflective therapy type book, but in story form. There's some parts you're nervous, some parts she's fighting, some parts you're not sure what's gonna happen, some parts it's scary. Like, it just takes you on this roller coaster in a short format and shows you how much inner will and self-belief and willingness to change your mindset, how far that can go. You know what I mean? And when we first met and when we've talked, I think we both kind of opened up and shared that we struggle with anxiety and depression. And it has played a factor into my purpose and what I've done to create this podcast. And a big reason why I speak out to people listening in, because I know there's a lot of people that struggle out there. I'm just kind of wondering for yourself, like, what role has mental health played in your journey, and what role does it play for you right now? If any.
So in the midst of writing the book, as I said, I was literally, I would say that's the first time that I was aware that, it was depression all the way. I don't know if in the past, if things I went through, maybe make you feel depressed, but I think there's a difference. This was when I learned, like, okay, there's a difference between feeling a little depressed and then actually being in a depressive state. So, prior to like writing the book and during those years, I was like, I was down. I was like, I could sleep for like 15, 16, 17 hours. Like, literally could wake up. When I would wake up in the morning, I also had anxiety, so I would wake up, and I still struggle with this sometimes. Not as bad then, because I was like in a traumatic state. But you wake up in the morning, and I'd feel like I can't breathe. So like I'd wake up and I'd have to like really take like deep breaths. And it was just like facing the day. It was just like, I don't want to face the day. And it was So I was getting done, and this is the thing. If you're functioning, it goes so, it's so unnoticed. No one even, it's just like, oh, she's just tired.
She's fine. She's okay. She'll get over it.
No one even I didn't even want to use the word.
Yeah.
So like 5 years ago, I wouldn't have sat here and said, I'm depressed. I wouldn't have said that.
Right.
Because I don't like saying labels or claiming something on yourself, but this was a real thing. This is like really what I went through. And I would drop my kids off to school, and if I didn't have to work, I didn't have to do anything, I was back in that bed, and I was in that bed all day. I didn't want, and I would have my moments of like, I'd be good. So like in front of everybody else, I was good.
Yeah. But
and
behind closed doors.
That's masking, you know, like that's like in this. And then it wasn't until, so I went through those couple years on my own, and I got out of that on like my own accord. Then I went into counseling.
Wow.
So it's like you go through 2 years of depression and anxiety, and you're going through this on your own. Then I hit a low moment where it wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, no, I'm not out of this. You know what I mean? Like, I want out of this completely.
Right.
And I walked into a counseling place, and I literally like broke down. I was crying. I was just like, I don't know, but I need help. Like, I've just been through too much in my life. And counseling, I always was kind of like biased towards, you know, like,
for sure.
I didn't grow up in that. Like with my father's issues, like we should have been in family counseling. We should have been, there was no, when I grew up, it was like, you don't talk about.
Yeah, you sweep
no
it under the rug. It's silent.
Right. Yeah, nobody. So I didn't learn how all that is mental health. You know, it's mental health if you, if someone asks you if you're okay and you say, yeah, and you're not.
Right.
So now it's like, anybody who talks to me, I tell you how I feel. Like, there's no more, if I don't feel good, oh, I'm tired, or, oh, I don't feel good today, or I'm struggling. And that needs to become the norm. We should not be saying we're fine if we don't feel fine.
Oh my
you know, like
God.
that's not
100%.
That's fire.
And you know, it's crazy because there's a song I've been listening to on repeat the last couple of weeks. I'm gonna send it to you after the show, and I'll attach it to the description in this YouTube video. But it's a song called Fine, and it's literally like the beginning of the story is like somebody asked him if he's fine, and he's like, yeah, I'm fine. If F is for not doing all right, and I is for I'm not okay, and N is for like, it's just talking about like when people say that and we just respond out of normalization. Like, yeah, I'm okay. Oh yeah, everything's good. How you doing? I'm good. We're always good. You know what I mean? Like mental illness, mental health. I don't even like to say it's an illness because it's just health. Checkups are health. Making sure you're okay physically is health. Mental is just the same thing. We should all be able to speak on that. And I came from a household as well where like my family has patterns of mental health issues, mental health problems, men and women. And for years and years, I had struggled growing up and nobody spoke about it. So I didn't even understand where these patterns were coming from. I didn't understand where my struggle was coming from, internally, externally. And it took so many years for us to even start admitting those words: depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, alcoholism. Like they were there, but they weren't spoken. So silence sometimes can be so like strong in family dynamics and that's something that we need to change, the silence. You know what I mean? Being able, like you say now, you talk to your kids about these things. You open up to them about them, these things. Do you open up to the point where they understand the struggle that you've been through, or do you feel like you still kind of try to hide that with your children personally?
So my son, I waited until he was 18 to tell him beginning to end. Wow. So like throughout, I was having the conversations, but then there was a lot of like, you know, there's still things you don't, you know, you want them to understand. So once he was like, okay, has an adult mind now, because when I was growing up again, it was like 14, it was like, oh, you're getting a job, you're buying your own stuff. Oh, 18, you on your own, you this and that. It's like, your brain isn't even like developed. And we were, you know, to do all these things and take care of so many things. So I did talk to him, like I told him beginning to end. And I think that's important. A lot of people struggle because of family secrets or because of things they didn't know. Like I knew my dad was an alcoholic. I didn't know he was a drug addict until like a little over a teenage, you know, like after I was already out the house and everything. So all this stuff was going on. I didn't know. Now, would I have been better if I knew or didn't? I don't know, but I think education matters, and I think understanding things matter, and
communication, I think, just in general, like us talking about it, us being open, us being able to, you know, record this and let other people watch it, like just opening up. And it's okay to not be okay. Like you were saying, it's okay to be vulnerable and talk about the trauma, the past, etc. And you know, I just need to quote in your book in Twisted Fate Uncut on page 50. And I think this was huge when I read this, because I have always felt this way. And to see that you said it, I was like, yo, I'm not alone. But it says, when you have a calling in your life, the enemy, and this is not quote unquote word for word, but when you have a calling in your life, the enemy will continue to keep you down and put you down over and over. And the key to, getting over the enemy putting you down or those obstacles is to keep fighting, is to keep pushing forward, is to keep going forward. What advice do you have? Because like Reesa, like when I look at you and people listening in, like, single young mom, going through shelters, going through poverty, going through struggle, getting your GED on your own, being in abusive relationships, losing so many people in your life, and looking at you sitting here today as a strong woman who is now writing her book, starting her own company, which we'll get into next, and all of that. But, what was that key to keep fighting or keep going? Was it just that knowledge of knowing you had that purpose in the future?
It's such a hard question.
It is a hard question.
Because when I think it's like, I definitely always been a fighter. So I don't want to say it's in you or it's not, or, because I believe anyone who, you can get there.
Yeah.
So I would just say, you can't, I'll say what you can't do. You can't let failure, stop you. You can't let your mistakes stop you. You can't let, anything you've been through stop you. Like, you do have to, like, really, because I don't know if I always believed in I think I'm still struggling to believe in myself, because it's other people that have encouraged me to be who I am. So I definitely can owe to all the people along the way that like reminded me of who I was. And again, I feel like that's spiritual. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's like these strangers, these people I don't know who come in before I wrote a book, people would come in my inbox and be like, oh, you really inspire me, or like, oh, you posted this quote. And it's like just something little that can make someone else's day. Right. I'm a helper. I'm a server. So I believe in serving. I always was helping other people. I always, I sit and people share their stories, and now because I have my book, I feel like it's even more. Sometimes I'm like, okay, it's like, now I know, like, I have like a million books in my head of all these people's stories, but
for sure.
It's a, what's the word? It's, they say God won't give you anything that he doesn't trust you with. Yeah. So God trusts me with people. He trusts me with their hearts. He trusts me with their secrets, with their stories. People will sit with me and tell me things that's like, I'm like, wow. Like you went through all that. And I remember when I was in hair school, someone I met who now she's literally my sister, like family, has been over like 11 years. And she shared with me her story. And at the time I had went through so much, but I wasn't at like the breaking point. You know what I mean? Like the breaking point was when I wrote the book. That was when that was my moment of like, how the heck did I survive all this? Like when I was looking over my own life. So up until then, I was kind of downplaying what I had been through. It just seemed, I don't know. It's like,
I feel like it's almost like sorry to cut you off, but like a fight or flight mentality, because you're going through so much. It's like if you had stopped at any point in that journey and like sulked on what was going on, like, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that, I can't, how am I going to get through the struggle? How am I single? How am I going to figure this out? You might not have been able to continue. You know what I'm saying? But it was like that mindset of almost being able to just like keep going and keep pushing. And then now you're able to look back and reflect and be like, wow, I really did all that. And like, I just want to highlight that for anybody listening in who's come from an abusive household, like we said, and I'm not just saying abusive, but we talked about our environment and how important the environment that you're born into affects your future and how you go forward, not only in your thought process, your mental health, your physical self, how you present yourself to other people. You are always a giver, and you would give to everybody, to the point where it almost became a disadvantage until you realized it, but also realizing you're a server and you're here to help and this is part of your purpose, but it's all lessons. So it's like anyone listening in who right now, like you think that you can't go forward because of where you started, because the environment that you were born into.
Right.
Yo, I'm telling you, just by Reesa's story, by my own story, like you can keep going forward. You can keep pushing no matter what it is or who comes in your life and tells you what you can be, what you can't be. Having that mindset of knowing the future is going to be better than the present, and having that willingness to go, you will see the things around you in the universe start working for you. And that, seems like also a theme throughout your book. The more you believed in yourself, the more you invested in yourself, raised your kids, got your GED, knew that you could have a career, knew you could do this and that. Did you feel like you started to see the doors opening up through the universe because of your own manifestation of like trying to do something positive? Do you feel like it kind of like looped back to you?
You mean like prior and to now?
Yeah.
Or just the whole way?
Or just like the whole way. Like just what you've done. Like, do you feel like what you've put out has kind of come back?
Yes. And I don't have any regrets. I remember I said this to someone and they was like, oh, I have so many regrets and this and that. And it's like, but everything matters. You know what I mean? Like everything that led up to anything, every single even sometimes down to like the seconds, like, like I think about stuff like that. I think about like, oh, if I wasn't here at this time in this place and this, but you know what I mean? Like it's like
this wouldn't have happened. Like
it's like there's billions of people in the world. In our whole life, we're not gonna meet a billion people, but we're gonna meet people who some are gonna hurt us, some are gonna be good to us. But I was always adamant on not changing who I am to the core. And I come into contact with certain people who are in bitter places. They're in that stuck place. They're in that unforgiveness place. I learned what forgiveness means in like my late 20s, which is you forgive for yourself. So you are forgiving the other person, and we have to forgive because we're all sinners and God, is going to forgive us for our sins, but you forgive for yourself. So when you hold on to that, so you asked that earlier, is like, forgiving your parents, and that's what they say, like you begin your healing when you understand your parents are just, they're human too. Yeah. And those are conversations I have with my kids. It's like, I'm tired. Like I tell them how I feel. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you can't always be like that too strong person because you're going to break. And I mean, I've had a million breaking points. Yeah. But you do have to get up. Facts. And you have to keep going, and you have to find, things that you're passionate about. You have to find things that is for you, outside of being a mother, outside of being a daughter, outside of being a friend. Like I'm still there. Like this is still new to me, where like every day I'm like reinventing myself and trying to do better. Yeah. And I always was like that. So that was always in me, as far as like, I always wanted to be, somebody. It was like no matter what I went through. And I mean, I've been through a lot.
And you got to check out the book to know a lot.
A lot. Even what I wrote in the book, that's minimal. Right. There's so much that is not in there. There's a lot that things I wasn't comfortable talking about, or, things with my kids, want to protect certain, people, stuff like that.
Of course.
So I really was very specific, as you saw, like with the topics, the experiences I spoke about, and like really honing in on those, and like, how can I help someone? Yeah. That was like, my goal was like, okay, how can I use, because God told me you're going to help people, is like, each chapter was like, okay, what message do I want this chapter to get across, and how can I help someone that may be going through this right now? Because that's the thing about when you come out of something, I don't ever want to be so far out of something that I can't still sit with someone that's going through it. You know what I mean? And that can be a challenge.
Yes.
And even like I said, I'm mentoring now. That's like, I'm doing that because a few years ago I was there. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, I might only be a little bit further than that, and I'm not exactly there. Yeah. But I know how that feels.
Yeah.
And I think it's so like relatable. An obligation. Right. Almost like yeah, we are supposed to go back and help. You know what I mean? That's why I watched a sermon and I remember it stuck with me, and he said, if I can say it right, he said, God blesses you. So something like God blesses you so you can, or God blesses me so I can bless you. God blesses you so you can bless them.
Right.
And then that's how it keeps going.
100%. And that's how I feel like, you know, for people like us, when we can take our struggles and our obstacles and put them into a form where then we can relate that to other people to get through their own obstacles and struggles, we're winning. You know what I mean? That is the wealthiest that we could ever be, when you reach that point where you can finally give that back and feel fulfilled by doing that. And that's literally exactly what this book is. And I said this to you off air, but I'm gonna say it on air. When I read Twisted Fate, how it's physically put together, the proverbs that you put, the sections in between chapters where you can write about your own struggles, that she gives you space to physically write on the lines about what you're going through and reflect based on chapters. It's just so beautiful. And in the translation of this into the business that you are now looking to create, and the publishing company that you're looking to grow in the future, you know, Reesa Write Ink. Can you tell us like a little bit about how you writing this book translated then from, you know, a passion to kind of being entrepreneurship to now kind of going towards like a business sector? What does, you know, Reesa Write Ink look like in the future?
So when I wrote the book, you know, as I said, my vision was I'm writing this book to help others embrace their story.
Yeah.
So then as I'm on this journey, as I said, everything always like, it just goes.
Yeah, for sure.
Then it was like people would be like, oh, like I would love to write a book. You know, like I'd meet people, I'd go to these events and they'd be like, oh, I would love to write a book. And the thing was, I did that by myself. I could not afford, down to like the clothes I'm wearing on the cover, I had to return. Like there was no budget.
Yeah.
The budget was negative.
Yes.
And I'm never, and I still am in that space now. That's what I'm saying, you know, trying to build that like better relationship with money where you're like willing to invest more. But I've done this on like trying not to take from my home. So it's like, you know, that's just how you think when you've always been on your own and you know what it feels like to really not have and to really, you know, I still, you know, like struggle, you know what I mean? Like I'm not nowhere near like, you know what I mean? I'm just like a little bit further as I go of getting out of it. So I did this on a nothing budget. And so now so then it started making me think of like other people who are like, well, how many people would want to write a book? And maybe they're looking at, you know, pricing and they're just like, oh, I can't do that, you know, and then maybe that's going to discourage them. Yeah. So now it's like, I want to show people and, you know, I want to create something for the people like me.
Right.
Basically. And there's somebody I look up to. Her name's Mia Ray. She doesn't know me, but maybe she'll hear this.
Shout out Mia Ray.
She's an amazing woman entrepreneur. Don't know her. Like she doesn't know me. She's from Detroit. She has a bag line and luxury bag line of her, you know, it's her own brand. And she says she created it for girls like her. Like she wanted to create something like with good quality and good and that people would love, but affordable. Right. And, you know, I look up to her and I've like followed her journey and everything. And I can relate so much. It's like, and that's me. That's like, how can I create something where I can help somebody put their story out, but somebody who is just like me? Right. You know 100%. What I mean? Or maybe not like me, but I definitely want to cater to people that look at this and maybe they're like, how did she do that? Like how I want a book, like how, and show them how it's done and like help them to get it done on like wherever they're at in life and in their budget. And if you don't have no budget, we'll figure it out. And how can we figure it out? Because that saying is true. Like God doesn't give you a gift based on your finances. He gives it based on like your faith. And like what he will help you get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you got to buy clothes and return them, and if you have to do your own makeup.
Girl, I've said it on the show.
You know what I mean? Like,
half the outfits I wear in the show I buy and return. I literally, Amazon Prime, shout out you. You know, don't come after me. But
they have like a try before you buy now.
Try before you buy. Girl, trust me, I know all the details in and out. I'm like Kohl's #1 return girl every month. But that's the beauty of it. Like, you can see this physical product. You can see this book. And when I read it, I'm like, oh my God, it's so well made. The different, like, it's just so personalized, personable. Not even knowing you did this with no budget, not knowing you had to return those clothes, not like you have a professional photo shoot. Like, it's just all these things that go in the behind the scenes stuff that people don't know, you know? But is, you know, Reesa Write Ink, is this in the works right now? Is this 100% official? Or where is that process at?
Yep, so it's in the works. So what I'm working on right now is I'm working with a couple people. So my idea is that I mentor like 2-3 people, and, you know, so I can go through the process, see what it looks like time-wise and what it entails, and then really decide, like, you know, what I'm willing to offer and how far I want to do.
For sure.
Because definitely, like, memoirs are my lane. Memoirs and poetry, that's my lane. So it will be very, like, there'll be a lot of boundaries around, like, what I'm willing to do, because I'm going to do, like, what I'm comfortable with and what I feel like I can offer. You know, I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, I can do everything. And it's like, no, like, this is what I know how to do.
Right.
So right now I'm mentoring a couple people, and then my idea is to, like, complete those few books so that I have, like, 2-3 examples of people that I worked with. We did that. They have a finished book. Yes. And then I'm going to go off of that. And then I feel comfortable that then I can, like, set a price or, like, you know, figure out how that's going to look and what I'm going to offer.
For sure.
So it'll be, right now, the idea is, like, publishing services. So, like, you come to me with the idea. You have a vision. Like, are you a writer? Are you not? Do you want me to write it? Let's figure out how we can get it done. And then taking your idea and getting it to a published book.
Yes, that's amazing.
You know, and I mean, it is a product, like you said, and it's like I said, that's another avenue of making money. So that's, you know what I mean? So for the person who is like, you work a job, but, like, you're thinking, like, how can I make some extra money? You have a book. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And now you can start something, and you can get your story. I hear people tell me their stories, and I hear amazing survival stories, or even people that are still going through stuff, and people tell me their childhood and all these things I've gone through, and I sit and I cry with people, and you know what I mean?
It's like, those are the stories that need to be highlighted. That's what needs to be in books. That's what people need to be able to read. So it's relatable. Like I said, like, how many people listening in are going to be like, yo, I came from the same upbringing as Reesa, but I'm sitting here today thinking I can't do it because everybody around me and all my life, everything has told me I can't do it. I'm not good enough. But the fact is, you're just not in that mindset yet. But there's people like you who are. And if we can just show that as an example through stuff like this, publishing it, like, yo, you know, Reesa Writes might be publishing Jesse Ellie's first book. Like, y'all don't know, but that's how we can make the change for the future. That's how we can show younger generations it's okay to talk about these things. And in that in itself will make the ripple effect to, like, break the generational chains, break the family chains, be that one person who's like the black sheep. And it's like, yeah, you've had mental health problems in your family for 6 generations. Well, you're going to be the one chain to break that shit and do something different. You know what I mean? And I really feel like that's what you did. And through not only the books that you've published, but the publishing company you're starting, and you yourself as a being, Reesa, like, so admirable, so inspirational for youth, for women, for anybody going through a struggle. I think it's so important for us, like I'm saying, to be able to put that on the table. And I know how much it probably took you personally yourself to get to the point where you were able to physically put this into a form. So I just want to thank you for that, for sharing it. And I do have one more question for you. I ask all the people that come on my show this question, but I'm just wondering, you know, as Reesa Write, through what you've been through, your life, etc., what does it mean to you to be an old soul in a young world, or to have an old soul?
I just have one thing to say for something
Please
you just
do.
said before that. But
Please
I do
do.
want to say off what you just said is that, to the people listening that they feel like they can relate and that there is a reason why you feel different. And there's a reason why you feel, I always felt like the outcast. I always felt like, not for nothing, but the F up and the screw up. And I was a risk taker, and I was, like I said, running around. Once I was old enough, I was doing, I always had a strong mind. I was doing me and all that stuff. Yeah. And that comes with things, you know what I mean? It's like,
sure.
And it's not a bad thing.
For sure.
And if you are listening and you feel like, why don't I feel support from my family? Why don't I feel love? Why don't I feel this? Why don't I feel that? It's like God has something for you that is like so big, and sometimes he really does have to get you in a place. And maybe if we don't know that, we fight it. So it's like, you don't know that until you know it. But this is why I really will, I always say, like, it really is important to have spirituality and have that in your life, because you want to have discernment. You want to know what alignment feels like. You want to know what it feels like. I mean, I could have avoided, now I do. Now I know when I pray about maybe like a relationship or a person and stuff like that, I know what it feels like when he says no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you want to feel that, then you can start to avoid these things. And that comes with that's how you break the generational curses. It's hard. Yeah. It's very painful. It's very hard. It'd be very easy to just go through life and do whatever. But it's like, if you want to make an impact in life and for other people, you have to do the hard work. And I just want to say, like, to those people listening, like, there's a reason why you're like, why am I going through so much? You know what I mean? Because they say, if the devil got you, then he'll leave you alone.
Yep.
If God wants you, you know what I mean? He's going to keep. And if you have a calling, it's going to keep calling. And if, all those things, they're not just sayings. They're not just like, I literally can, like, I want to say to everybody that I can literally testify that I've seen what God can do. I've been at the bottom. I've been at a lot of low points and been through a lot. And if you have something inside of you, like, really just try to push through however you can.
And I'm sorry, just before you give your old soul answer, I just want, I feel like you motivate me to, like, do my motivational rants. So it's like, I just gotta say to everyone listening in, like, I have always felt growing up I was weirdo. I was different. I felt like, if there was a whole crowd of people, I was over here by myself. I just never felt like I fit in. And for so many years of my life, in my teenage years, I had convinced myself that I didn't have a purpose here, and that I was a mistake, and that God or the universe or whatever you relate to or you want to call it put me here by accident, and that I wasn't actually supposed to be here. And to the point where I thought if I left this world, it would be better because I was confused being here. I just want to let you know that if you feel those ways right now, if you've struggled through that, and if you relate to anything me or Reesa said, it's wrong. It is something trying to get in your mind. It is that devil, that advocate trying to come through and break you down and try to make you feel like you're not good enough, that your purpose isn't good enough, that your voice isn't loud enough, that what you have to say doesn't matter. I want to tell you that it does matter. Everything you do matters. Everything that you're gonna do matters. And you are important, and you are meant to be here. And everybody in this world is gonna benefit from you being here. And when I read your book, I really went back to that moment in my life when I started recognizing that I was wrong, thinking that I was not supposed to be here, because I am supposed to be here, and I do have a purpose, and Reesa has a purpose, you have a purpose. I just had to say that. That was like that divine,
I just had to say that like it was nothing.
It was just like, it's one of those things, like when you said, you had to write your book and you just started writing your book. Mm-hmm. it just comes through you. Sometimes there's things that you just need to let come through you and be vulnerable and be open about it, because that's what will change the future. All right, I'm gonna stop ranting.
You can do it. Like you can.
Yo,
like,
you can.
Like I really I'm that person. Like I always, like they say, like, oh, I don't look like what I've been through. It's like so people wouldn't know. And it's like, and I'm very like, up until I wrote my book, like I was not somebody putting my business in public. I'm not that person. I was never on social media, like complaining or this and that. Like no. I dealt with everything by myself. So I was very, so when I come outside and it's like, you don't know what went on in that house. You don't know the breakdowns, the tears, the time in the car, and you can't move, and you're stuck, and you're like screaming and crying out to God. I mean, I went through a lot, and this was all the way from 16 years old is when like things just like hit. And after that, it was like life happened, and it was like I'm on this like roller coaster of life, and don't ever think that there's not this. Like I said, I hear so many. We're all. We're human. Like every single person has a story. And I did want to say, like, that was another reason why when I wrote it, because I felt like a lot of celebrities write memoirs, right? But like after, like then they tell their whole story. They're like, oh, this is where I started and I made it.
Right.
I told my story when I was rock bottom. Right. So like I was in that place of like, I can let this crumble me. And I've seen what that does, and you can be stuck there for the rest of your life. Yeah, it's that serious. Yes, like depression and all that. I mean, I've seen it.
You can be so defeated that you feel you cannot move forward
forever,
and that's why
you will stay there. You will never date again. You will never leave the house again. You will let yourself go. Yeah, you will you'll diminish yourself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's like life is gonna go on, right? And people are gonna live there. You know what I mean? Right. People are gonna go on and. Right. You really have to get up for yourself. You know what I mean? Like I can say, like, of course I had kids young, so I had responsibility. So I did have something that, if someone doesn't have that motivation every day, because I don't know what that's like. I've always had kids, so I know. So I don't know the other side of like having to really fight just solely for yourself. Yeah. So I can imagine that's, you know what I mean? Because you don't have anybody needing you in that moment. So it's probably, I'm sure a lot harder because now you really have to dig so deep because there's nobody coming to you like, oh, I'm hungry. I need to do this. I need to do that. And then you have to get up. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? If you can find, and that's, I really, this is where God comes in, because if you don't have a father, God is there. If you don't have a mother, God is there. If you don't have a friend, God is there. And when you're in your lowest point and by yourself, God is the one that's going to lift you up. Nobody on earth can do that for you. Yeah, like nobody.
And I hope you're okay with me saying this, but so I have gone through churches. I've gone through my own religious, spiritual experiences, and I've come to the realization. I use the word. I think God sometimes puts a label on things that it turns people off. And I just want to say, when Reesa is saying, when God's there, God is there for you. Like, if you want to call it the universe, call it the universe. If you want to call it your purpose, call it the purpose. I'm just saying that there is a higher external power outside of us that is guiding choices, decisions. And when you act, it will react. You feel me? And it is something that we can't express. We can't put our hand on, can't put our finger on. Sometimes you can't put a label on it. But if you're listening in and you don't have that connection with church or quote unquote God, just know that there is a higher power in the universe that is always willing and waiting for you to accept your purpose. And when you are ready to accept it, it will start reacting to what you are doing. And that's when you will see the manifestation of your actions going forward. And sorry, I just want to say that just in case anyone's listening in who isn't doesn't believe in God, etc.
They say you have two things you're fighting every day. It's the two battles. It's like something telling you you're not worth it, you're not this, you're not, the two voices. So it's like, it's in those times that can get you, and make you question yourself and make you not want to leave the house and make you like feel a way about yourself and make you like, oh, I don't want to go to that event because for what? Like what is? And I still get those thoughts sometimes.
I still get those today. Coming to the show today, I was doubting myself. I was questioning if I could do this today. I was nervous. I'm like, oh my God, this book is so good. How am I going to highlight Reesa? How am I going to highlight my guest before Reesa? But you know what the thing is, guys? It's about doing it. It's what Reesa said in the beginning. It's about starting it. If you don't start it, you'll never know. You feel me? But once you start it and you realize, you can start adjusting. You can make mistakes. You can keep going. But the first thing is taking the step. You know, take the step to get better, to do more, to help others. Look outside of yourself as well. You know what I mean? Like, once you internally reflect, then reflect that to other people, because they might need it just as badly as you did, but they can't ask for it. And
look to other people as, you know, like growing up, I don't feel like I had like specific role models where I was always kind of looking to like, sorry, you know, like if I had a teacher or somebody, like I was looking for like role models outside. And I tell my kids that too. I say, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many people along your journey. It's like, look to those people. I tell my son, like, you know, look to, you know, I'm not a man, so I can't teach him everything. I can teach him only so much. And, you know, those people that come in your life that mean good, and they, you know, look to them. And that's how you're gonna, all those pieces you find along the way to like encourage you. And
I think everybody also, just to wrap this with a bow, every single person who comes into your life is for a purpose. And I think you said in your book, it doesn't mean that they're all forever people. Some of the people that we meet are temporary. Some are to teach us lessons. Some are so that we can teach them lessons. But the truth of the matter is, everything happens in your life for a purpose, and everybody comes into your life for a purpose. And it's how you react to that and what you do with that, in recognizing that, even if it's good or it's bad, coming to terms with it in general. But again, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everyone who comes on the show. Reesa, what do you feel like, through what you've been through, that it means to be an old soul?
An old soul.
Even if you're not an old soul, just kind of like...
Oh, no, I think I am.
Oh, she goes, oh, no, girl, I am. Which I already knew you was, but...
And no one's ever asked me that, so I've never had to explain. But if I had to say what I think it means for me, I think it's being very wise, and a lot of wisdom at a young age, and like I said, feeling different, feeling a little out of place, feeling like you outgrow things faster, but then you kind of wanna, but then you're like, oh, but this is the thing to do, so then you might kind of like do things longer than you should have, or do, you know, like sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, maybe 10 years ago, if I would have, you know, like before the author life, you know, clubbing and partying and things that were fun at the time. But then it's like, sometimes you feel like, oh, this isn't really for me, but you do things that to like, you know, whatever is the end and stuff like that. And I think being an old soul is like, I think it's definitely like the chosen ones. And I think it's ones that can have a knowledge and a wisdom that they find within themselves to like help other people, and kind of like wise beyond their years, that can, you know, inspire and have something in them that's just kind of like unexplainable. And especially if you want to tie it into like breaking generational curses and stuff like that, it's like, you know, maybe we feel things so strongly because we're really feeling things that we're meant to break.
Ooh.
So,
That's fun.
oh my God. Yo, that was a dope
because I'm
answer.
definitely like, I mean, when I say I'm a failure, I'm like a failure.
I am
like,
literally an empath.
Yeah, I'm an empath. I feel, my nerve, you know, literally my nerves, I can feel someone else's pain. I can feel things that, is like, I wouldn't want anyone else. And that's what made the pain I went through with certain things so like detrimental, because it's like, I literally, it's a physical, you know what I mean? It's an inside physical thing. It's a lot of emotion, a lot of, you know, mental things. And,
wow.
Yeah. So I would say an old soul is like, we're beyond our years for a reason. And we have to, I think it maybe took me some time to be, and I still am like okay with who I am, that I believe in real love. Like I believe in things that a lot of people don't, they're like shut off from.
Yeah.
And I'm like in this world by myself and I'm fighting these fights. Like,
Facts.
no, like this is real. And no, I
Facts.
believe in that. And I believe in this. And
Because
I don't want to conform. That's the word. I don't want to
Exactly.
conform. I'm this person for a reason. You know what I mean? And even if other people don't go that way, it's like you have to be okay with who you are. And it can be a hard place. It can be a lonely place. It can be like, not feeling connected until you meet people along the way and you feel that alignment and then you find your people. And, it's good to, it's something to know that there's people for everybody, and you don't have to dumb yourself down. You don't have to stay in a certain clique because, maybe, because they're making you feel like, she thinks she's too good or she thinks she's that. It's like, no, this is just, like I'm growing. I'm like every day I'm growing. Even if I don't want to, it's like it's just happening.
Facts.
So there's a reason for, everyone. I'm supposed to be who I'm supposed to be because there's people out here that need me. There's people that need you. There's people that need everyone along the way that to inspire and help. And so I don't know if that was a good explanation, but...
It wasn't a good explanation. You just actually defined my term of how I personally feel about being an old soul in the young world, because it's always been
old soul in the young world.
Yeah, but it's always been that old soul vibe. Like I knew things at a young age. I knew what was right from wrong. I knew that I was discerning things before I even knew what the word discernment meant. Right, yep. I felt it. I internally, physically felt it. If somebody made me upset, I would physically react to it. I'm not saying fighting, but emotionally, you feel things different, and that's okay. It's okay to feel things. Even if this world around you is telling you to be cold, people in your life are telling you to give up, things are telling you to not be you, continue to be that unique self, that higher self. Because once you embrace that part of yourself, that old soul aspect, the genuine truth, the honesty, the emotion, the vulnerability, that leads to other people doing the same. So, once again, Reesa, I cannot thank you enough. You literally, I appreciate your energy. I appreciate your vibrations. I really don't connect with many women who understand mentally. You say things that I have only said to myself. You say things that I've only said when I'm praying. You know what I'm saying? And that to me is so divine. And that right there is an old soul vibe. So, we're just going to end it with that. That rhymed a little bit. We're poets. So we're going to end it on that note. But Reesa, I do want to give you the opportunity to let people know where they can find you on social media, if they want to reach out about a book, if they just want to hit you up to talk, or buy your books, where they can do that.
So on all platforms of social media, I'm Reesa Write around the board. Instagram is Reesa_Writes, but everything else is just Reesa Write. My website is reesawrites.com. My email is reesawrite without the S @gmail.com. If you want to email me, if you have a question, if you have you want to write a book or you just want to talk, I'm here. And again, I'll just leave it with, if you have something so deep inside of you and it feels as strongly, it's there for a reason, no matter what it is, whether it's something telling you to get away from something or it's telling you to go towards something. But, they say all the time that women, we're given the gift of intuition, and it's there for a reason. And we really can change the dynamic. This is something I've been saying to a lot of women. It's just we also can't have to stop placing blame and take our own accountability. Oof. And when we rise up and we set our standards higher and we, we can set the tone for a lot of things.
Facts.
It's been a lot of men and women, beat down and put down and all that. But we can only, men can only do that for themselves and women can only do that for themselves. But it's I'm definitely now an advocate of let's just keep doing better. Let's just keep growing within ourselves and set a higher example and try to get things back. Again, the old soul life is I call myself I believe in old school love, but I'm a modern day woman. So I'm an independent woman, but I do believe in the old school, the love and the real love and all that. And let's just get back to that.
For sure.
That's fire.
Thank you so much, Reesa. Again, like, you are amazing. If you guys, like I said, haven't checked out Reesa's book, make sure you go pick up a copy. Make sure you hit her up. This literally helped me where I am at right now after what the struggles I've been through. To read her book put me at a different level of higher self, a different level of mindset. And I want y'all to know, wherever you stand right now, you are on your purpose. You are on your journey. It is already working. Even if you think it's not, it's already in the process of becoming. It's already in the process of happening. So for these next week, let go of the stuff that you've been holding on to. Forgive the people that you've been putting that hate towards, and work in a love mindset, work in a love state, and you will see the change around you start happening. I'm trying to apply that to my own life. I know Reesa's trying to apply that to her own life, and every single day it's about taking the steps so that you can get to the end goal, but not just focusing on that end goal, enjoying the journey, enjoying the process, and knowing that the growth will come with it. So everybody, make sure y'all check out Reesa Write and tune in with me next week on Old Soul in the Young World with your host, Jessie Ellie.